The Girl with No Hair. In the lush, remote village of Brindale, beauty was not just skin deep, it was judged by the cascade of hair flowing down a woman's back. The longer and shinier, the more revered she was. In this village, where women braided dreams into their hair and men wooed with silk ribbons to gift them, there was one girl who stood apart not by choice, but by the cruel hand of fate. Her name was Lila. She was born with no hair. Not a single strand graced her head from the moment she entered the world. Her scalp was smooth, almost luminous in the sunlight, and though her mother tried every remedy, herbal pastes, moonlit prayers, offerings to the gods, her condition remained unchanged. As the years passed, her hairless state became a spectacle. The villagers whispered cruelly, "What good is a girl with no hair? She's cursed." Children laughed behind her back, pulling off their scarves to mimic her bald head. Lila grew up in this cruel shadow of disdain. Though her face was strikingly beautiful, no one could see past her bare scalp. Her only solace was the forest on the edge of the village, where the trees stood tall and unjudging, their leafy canopies shielding her from the world. One fateful evening, Lila ventured deeper into the forest than she ever had before. She had heard rumors of an old woman who lived in a hut hidden within the thicket, a witch, they said, who dabbled in forbidden magic. Desperation gnawed at Lila's heart. If the gods wouldn't grant her hair, perhaps the witch could. The forest grew darker as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lila pushed through thorny vines and gnarled roots until she found herself standing before a crooked hut, its roof sagging like a tired sigh. Smoke curled from the chimney, carrying with it the pungent scent of herbs and something more sinister. Lila hesitated. Her mother had warned her about meddling with the unnatural. But as she caught her reflection in a puddle nearby, her bald head gleaming under the moonlight, she felt a surge of resolve. She knocked on the door. It creaked open slowly, revealing a hunched figure cloaked in black. The witch's face was lined with age, her eyes sharp as daggers. "What do you seek, child?" the witch rasped, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "I want hair," Lila said, her voice trembling. "I'll give anything." The witch studied her for a long moment before stepping aside. "Enter." Inside the hut, the air was thick with the scent of strange brews and burning candles. Shelves lined the walls, crammed with jars of peculiar substances, powdered bones, dried flowers, things that looked alarmingly like human teeth. The witch gestured for Lila to sit. "You wish for hair," the witch said, stirring a cauldron that bubbled ominously. "Yes," Lila replied. "More than anything. Hair has power, you know," the witch said. "It carries the essence of a person. It can bind, betray, or bless. Are you ready for the price?" Lila nodded without hesitation. "Very well," the witch said, handing her a small vial filled with a shimmering silver liquid. "Drink this under the light of the full moon. But heed my warning. Beauty often comes with a curse." Lila barely registered the warning. She clutched the vial tightly, thanked the witch, and fled the hut. That night, under the luminous glow of the full moon, Lila stood by the riverbank. The vial felt cold in her hand, its contents swirling like liquid starlight. Without a second thought, she uncorked it and drank. The transformation was immediate and agonizing. A searing pain shot through her scalp, spreading down her spine. She fell to her knees, clutching her head as a strange warmth blossomed beneath her skin. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pain subsided. Lila opened her eyes and gasped. Her reflection in the river was unrecognizable. Hair thick, black, and lustrous cascaded down her back in glossy waves. It shimmered like spun silk, catching the moonlight in a way that made it almost seem alive. She reached up to touch it, her fingers trembling. It was real. She laughed, the sound echoing through the trees. When Lila returned to the village the next morning, the transformation caused an uproar. The once reviled girl was now the epitome of beauty. Women gawked in envy, men stared in admiration, and even the village elder couldn't hide his astonishment. Lila basked in the newfound attention. For the first time in her life, she was invited to festivals, courted by suitors, and treated with respect. She reveled in her hair's power, letting it flow freely as she walked through the village like a queen. But soon, strange things began to happen. It started with whispers, voices that seemed to come from nowhere. At night, Lila would wake to the sensation of something moving against her scalp, only to find her hair perfectly still. Then, one morning, she noticed that her locks had grown even longer overnight, trailing behind her like a dark river. The villagers, once awestruck, began to grow uneasy. Her hair. It's unnatural, they murmured. Lila ignored them, convinced they were jealous. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The truth revealed itself one night when a young man, one of Lila's most persistent admirers, tried to touch her hair without permission. The moment his fingers grazed a strand, it coiled around his wrist like a serpent. He screamed, struggling to free himself, but the hair tightened, pulling him to the ground. Lila watched in horror as her hair moved of its own accord, wrapping around the man like vines. It wasn't until she screamed for it to stop that it finally released him, leaving him pale and trembling. The incident spread through the village like wildfire. People began to avoid Lila, their admiration turning to fear. She retreated to her home, locking herself away as her hair grew wilder and more unruly. It writhed and twisted even when there was no breeze, and at night, she could feel it pulling her toward the forest. Desperate for answers, Lila returned to the witch's hut. "You didn't tell me it would be like this," she cried. The witch smirked, her eyes glinting with dark amusement. "I warned you, child. Beauty comes with a curse. Your hair is alive, bound to you by the essence of others. It hungers. Hungers," Lila whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. "For life," the witch said. "It will not rest until it is fed." Lila recoiled in horror. "How do I stop it?" The witch shook her head. "You can. You asked for hair, and now you have